months now and I'm tired. This 50th anniversary of the school has really been a stimulating adventure for me. I remember this was before the school was built, and when the school was built, my daughters who were here, applied here. I had granddaughters here.
Mary, we can't hear back here.
Oh, you can't hear. Well, then I better use this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyway, to me, this was an opportunity to reminisce, to go back, to meet some of these students that I hadn't seen for a long time, and to try and plan something that would be meaningful, something that they could take away with them after 50 years or 40 years or whatever it might be. To go back to why the school was built. Following the war, which was 39 to 45, a lot of soldiers either married overseas or came back to their sweethearts that they left behind here. And everywhere there were families starting up. We had all kinds of kids popping up everywhere. This is the baby boomers that are now being problems with retirement. They were a problem then because we had no room for them in our schools. Public school was getting very overcrowded, so they were very happy when the Catholic school board started building schools because it took the pressure off their numbers as well. And a lot of the Catholic schools that had been built earlier on were built near the church. Usually it was a sort of a deal. You had the church here, the rectory here, and the school was here. The ones that were being built in the 50s had to be built someplace else because there was no land around the school. I know I was teaching at St. Pius in Peterborough, and we were about 10 blocks from the church. That was fun when you were trying to get kids over there to practice for sacraments. But anyway, here, it was the same problem. There was no land enough, not enough land near the church to build a school. And Dr. Moher, who lived up here in the Nelson House, which used to be the Nelson House, and then later on after he left, it became a private hospital, Lakeville Private Hospital. But he had all this land here, and he decided that he would donate, not sell, donate enough land for a Catholic school. And it was stipulated that that was what it had to be used for, a Catholic school. And so that even after he was out of here, it couldn't be turned around and go into something else. And so this was in 1956 that he ceded this particular lot here for a school. Now the thing was, you could build a school, but there were 3 conditions. First of all, if you're building a Catholic school, you had to have sufficient students that not only for the year that you were building it and then even next year, but something projected down the line into the future. And the father of the family had to be Catholic before taxes could be transferred, because that's just the way it was. And they had to have some kind, it had to be only people within a 3-mile radius of that school site. Anybody else didn't count. I remember in that instance, we lived out on the 11th concession of Smith, and my dad said, well, you know, I'll go in on this. And Father Hoonan said to me one day, where exactly does your father live? And I said, well, we live on the 11th. And he said, well, I don't think that's within the 3-mile radius. So we drove out, and then on the way he said, I said, well, is it the 3 miles as the crow flies, or is it 3 miles by drone? But anyway, it was snip and tuck, and Father wisely decided, he said, look, Leo, just leave it for now. He said, no, we don't want, you know, cut any corners. We'll get enough without this, and then you can change later, which you did. But anyway, what to do? We didn't have enough students in the village because most of the families that were large families were sort of at the end of it, like the Heffernan family. The only one eligible to come here would be Max or Mike. So Mick, I guess was his name. and some of the other families as well. And you were the last one in your family too, Si. The others were already finished with elementary school. So there weren't enough children to build a school. And then all of a sudden, land was opened up for building along the 7th line. And a number of houses were built there, people with young families, and a lot of these were Catholics. So it turned out that we did have enough to build a school, because we not only had enough for now, but with people like the Holroyds and the O'Tooles and other families from there, we had quite a few back on into the future. So this was good. We were able to build a school with 57 pupils and a 2-room school. Now, the school was started, the building itself was started in 1957, September 1957. And Vina Company, I have no idea who they are, but they were the main contractors. And until the school itself was built, students were housed in the hall, Parish Hall, behind the church. Parish Hall was at one point a house which had belonged to a family. Mr. Scott, I think, owned it. And it was then deeded to the church, and they rented it out. In fact, my uncle and aunt and their family lived there for 2 years. And, but anyway, when the school was being built, they decided that this was where they would house these 57 students. Now, you'd be one of those signs. And was it divided, or was it all in one? All in one. Yeah. And there were 2 teachers hired. Betty Irwin, who was Betty Deladon from Lakeville, and she was the principal. And Jean McMahon, who lived down in Duro, was hired for the junior room, grades 1 to 4. Betty had grades 5 to 8. And so they were over in the parish hall from September until, I guess, maybe after Christmas. I'm not sure when they moved over here. I know the school was dedicated in February the 15th, but I don't know how long you were in it before that, or were you in it at all? Do you remember?
No.
But you should have remembered. Keevan, do you remember when...
I don't know exactly, but
It was after
it was
Christmas.
after Christmas.
Yeah, we know that. Anyway, the 15th of February was the day it was dedicated. And we have a picture here. Someplace. Copy one somewhere. This is the little school at the top. And this is your school board, which had been formed. And we have one of those fellows with us tonight. Can you tell us anything about that, Keevan?
Well, not a lot. I would just like to say that Father James Willingham is quite a man. He started the school with the help, I must say, of my sister and Mary Mann, who came here from Ottawa. And they did all the legwork for the school. And they did a tremendous job with the 3 of
That would
them.
be Della.
That was in 57. And in 59, he then built a church. And can you imagine back in 57 trying to build a school, which we had to float debentures for because the government didn't hand out money until the school was finished. And we got $40,000 for 2 rooms to build it, and that we had to furnish it for those 2 rooms. And then he, in 1959, built our church, and he paid for it, had it paid for before he left here. So those kind of men don't come every day.
And this is why we have had a plaque designed to honor Dr. Murray Mulder, who native the land, and Father Lewis.
Is there just 2 classes at the beginning?
There were only 2 classrooms. There were 4 grades in each classroom. Bishop Webster was bishop then, and I want to read you something he said. And I think it's very true, his words. I rejoice with you in the establishing of your school. I have followed with interest the planning, and I congratulate the board members on its completion. It is sufficient for the present and well planned for expansion in the future. May the education received here fit our young people to take their places in the community as good citizens, well equipped to go on to higher learning, and may it be a foundation on which they may build for time and eternity. And I guess it's come true, because the school has certainly expanded. Jean McMahon was here for 4 years, I believe, and then she moved on. Betty was only here for 1 year, and Helen Heffernan taught the senior room for 2 years, and Teresa Potts then was here for 1 year. And then we had a new staff come on board, and we have one of them with us tonight too. Kathy Hickey was the teacher in the junior room for 3 years. Maybe you can tell us something about those years, Kathy.
Well, all I can say, Mary, is that you mentioned that the classes were divided grade 1 to 4 and 5 to 8. When we were teaching, Terry Fitzpatrick and I, the primary classes there was an enlarged enrollment. So I actually had grade 1 to 3, and Terry had 4 to 8. My memories of it are wonderful. There was tremendous enthusiasm with the children. It was the first experience for me. I was right out of Teachers College. And the parents were so open and welcoming and accepting of us as new teachers. As Kevin said, Father Houlihan was a fantastic asset in our lives. Father Houlihan, as many of you know probably, was an upper school math teacher by profession, and Terry and I had both had him in upper school math. So when he came into the primary classes, it was quite a challenge for him, and it was quite humorous for us. But he was, his whole heart and soul was with the school, and as Katie said, they don't come overnight. Mr. Ed Nelligan was the inspector at that time, and different from today with the superintendents. He had a large area to which he spread himself. He visited, I think, most classrooms twice a year, and he took in all of the city of Peterborough. He took in Lindsay, the surrounding, Durrell, Lakefield, whatever, Ennismore, whatever their schools, 7 schools at that time. I thought he was wonderful because he was very keen on primary classes and very much into reading and phonics, and he was a great source of help and support for us. As you say, Kevin was one of the board members, along with Archie McIsaac and Joe Hoy, and my time. And it was just a really great experience here. We really enjoyed it.
I think too you found that there was a real closeness. That the community was right there with you. They were, they couldn't do enough to help. I believe your dad used to work on a rink here one time. I heard that, I don't know whether it's right or not.
Yes.
Yeah. And this kind of thing was something where you felt that everybody was working together. Parents and teachers and children, there wasn't a division there at all. Everybody worked for the good of the whole community, if you want to call it, school community, whatever. This went on with just the 2 rooms until 1967, which is about, I guess, 10 years, 68. And at that time, again, as happens with population fluctuations, the population was going down again. All these families of 6 and 7 kids were graduating, and there weren't that many new families coming along. But finally, we did get, in 1968, the Catholic schools were to amalgamate. The new ones had been built, and the city had to expand it, and they were going to have all under one board, no more than a private board. But this school was just about in danger of closing because they didn't have sufficient students. But again, family moved in, the Flaggers moved in with 5 kids in school. Somebody else had 2 or 3, and they got it just up enough to get over the magic number. So they were able to stay open and become amalgamated with the rest of the Catholic schools. Now that was a distinct advantage because now we were able to draw from the entire area. There were buses now, and people were being bused in from Buckhorn and from the Warsaw area and down to Oxford and Smith. So we had bigger pupil base. It was a lot larger base. And a lot of changes came now. We had following Kathy there and Terry. I think we had Norma Miller came in there someplace after that. Norma and Margaret Ridgway, again, 2 teachers. But then finally, then Barry O'Brien and Kay Kelly came, still 2 rooms. So then gradually we added more rooms because we had more students, or had more teachers because we had more students. And Evelyn LeClaire came. And in 1971 we started kindergarten because Frances, one of my daughters, she was 5 that year, so she got to go to kindergarten. Ones before had no kindergarten, so this was a change for her. Michelle was another one in that kindergarten, and so was Sandy. Right? And so this was a big step too. Now, I remember supplying in that room one time, and there was kindergarten in grade 1 and grade 2. And I had 3 daughters in that room, and they all reacted differently. Frances was very quiet, and she'd come and say, helping. And Peggy just ignored me. I don't know this lady, I never saw her before. And Pat sat there and said, "Hi, Mom." 3 different reactions, but it was fun. And then gradually we had, it expanded to 4 rooms. Finally we had portables. We had 2 rooms back here, and we had 1, 2, 3 portables. And it was in late 70s that the first addition was put on the school. And that was to enclose those 3 portables and make them part of the school. Now, that brought a few changes too. We had more staff, we had music, we had French, we had a lot of more rich enrichment in subjects. And we had part-time secretary, and each expansion brought more hours. And caretaker was here more hours, and so on. And it was good. It was good for the school. From then on, it continued to grow. You hit stagnant periods where nothing seems to happen, and then you go down a little bit, and then you go back up, and then all of a sudden it takes off. And this happened in the 80s. We had a great week in the 80s. I wonder why I say that. Because a lot of these families are here. Anyway, it was a good time. We excelled in sports, we excelled in music, and it was just a really good time for the school, good atmosphere. I was, in the 80s, I was now writing for the Lakeville Leader, and I found 2 or 3 of my old articles, and one was on Jeannie McCarthy when she went to Ireland as a contestant in the Rosa Tralee contest. And then there was another one on the Heffernan girls when they started their music group. And then part of that was the choir they started. So on top of what they were doing themselves, they were also working with the kids from the school to enrich their lives, to bring them into a choir situation so that they were were able to sing on special occasions in the church. So even though they weren't being paid for this, they were doing it. And these are the things, the qualities that I'd like to see in a school. I see plenty of them here. And I think it goes right on to the present day, because Veronica was just mentioning earlier on here that she's across the road. She used to see the lights on here late at night. Many times teachers would be here doing extra work or trying to get report cards done. That's another thing that I've always found. In many cases, I've found we had two types of teachers. We had very dedicated teachers that loved St. Paul's and they wanted to stay, and they did stay 9 years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever. And then you also had some beautiful specialists come in that were exceptional in drama or music or something like that, and they enriched the program for the kids. So it's been a pretty good school. Any questions? Oh, the last edition that went on was in 94, I guess. And that was a big one. It took in this gymnasium, the library over there, library and resource center. They added 2 more classrooms on this side. They added a computer room, a health room, and more office space, and a beautiful foyer on this side. And they also did some renovations of some of the older rooms. But, and again, as I say, we still have people who are excelling. And this is what we like to see. Any questions?
No, but I'll tell you something to do with the school. When we moved here, we had the house right on the corner here, and there were no other homes. And this was vacant property at the time. But anyway, as it went on, all of our children started to the school. But I got to tell this one on Patricia. She's back there.
Just left the room.
She was a very little girl, and the rest of them were at school, and the people that came on the bus would often forget their lunch and leave it out on the side of the bank. So her and little Wade Jopnik from up the street would make short work of their lunches. So I think Barbara packed lunches for a week, and she finally gave up. She said, if they leave them out there, then they'll have to pay the price.
We had good Christmas concerts. We had good little things. We didn't do big things. They went to the zoo, or they went to contests, things like this. They were pretty good. I remember Nick Cadigan. I think he was grade 2. And the public speaking contest, we were supposed to start in grade 3. I guess you could speak in the other ones, but to go to the Legion, you had to be grade 3 and up. Anyway, Nick did really well. I heard somebody say that you could go to the Legion and do this speech. So on the following Sunday, Nick arrived at the Legion. They asked him, "Oh, where are you from?" "Well, I'm from St. Paul's." "Oh." And they just automatically put him down as a grade 3 because he was a tall kid. I think he won. He wasn't supposed to. So they were pretty good out there. I've come back here this year to watch the Elaine Evans, one of the teachers here, has quite a good sports program going. And in the fall it was volleyball, and now in the spring it's basketball. Plus she's doing half a dozen other things as well. But I've enjoyed coming and watching the girls play. There's like a granddaughter in Ennismore and a granddaughter here. And when they play against each other, I can't say a word.
Your friend, buddy.
That's right. But we've had a good time. Now, I have 3 articles that I wrote in the Herald. One was about the beginning of school, one was about the first edition of the growth of the school, and then the last one was about the final edition, the big one, and the things that are happening here now. For instance, a couple of years ago, Mrs. Clemens was here. She had a lot of talent as far as drama went. And her, was it grade 8 that did the, I think it was, Anne, do you remember? Was it grade 8 that did Macbeth?
Grade 7.
Grade 7 and 8. And they did a fantastic job. that's not something you see in elementary schools too often. They did a beautiful job, just a beautiful job. And Mrs. Dumas did a great music program. And I know that they're doing great work now too. Violins. The kids that have private lessons, but they play as part of school activities. And before I forget, I must mention, I think it was in my last article, I'm going to read it, I'll forget if I say it. Must be the other one. And maybe I can wing it. Back in the 70s, the school was small. They didn't have a lot of this. Even said they had to furnish it and everything else and wasted money when it was built and so on and so forth. There wasn't a lot of money floating around. But anyway, we had 2 ladies who lived in the area, and they got together and they decided that they would they'd do a little bit of home ec for these kids, be a little bit of enrichment. One was an excellent seamstress and the other one liked to cook. And so they did. They worked with the grade 7 girls, and they taught them some